Good evening, class. My name is Bruce Smith, and my presentation will cover The Great Chicago Fire and the Myths of Miss O'Leary's Cow by Richard F. Bales. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 has long been associated with Miss O'Leary and her unlucky cow. Bell delves into the 12-day investigation by the city's Board of Police and the city's fire commissioner production of an insignificant report that the cause of the fire couldn't be determined. In Richard Bell's book, he exonerates Miss O'Leary and her cow as the culprits. He disproves the commission's report, and Bell also uncovers solid evidence of official indifference and undercover inquiries aimed at preserving reputations and the possible source of the spark that leveled a city. In 1871, Chicago was a city on the rise of greatness. First organized in 1833, it had quickly grown from a town that was inhabited by approximately 200 people to a city of more than 334,000. Half of the population was consisted of Native Americans, the other half were immigrants mostly from Northern Europe. Both groups lived in an area of the city that was 36 miles in size. Chicago had quickly rose to the fourth largest city in the country and in the process had become the industrial, commercial, and cultural metropolis of the Midwest due to its ports. Shortly after 9 p.m. on the evening of Sunday, October 8, 1871, a fire broke out in the barn of Patrick and Kathy O'Leary, who lived in the city's west side. It took only a few hours for the fire to spread to the south side of the city. At 11:30 p.m., burning debris had blown across the Chicago River and had ignited a horse stable on the south side. At 2:30 a.m., a train transporting railroad cars containing oil caught fire. These cars were on the north side of the city. As the rain fell on the fire and it diminished on Monday evening at 11 p.m. By the time the fire went out completely in the early morning of Tuesday, October 10th, the flames had destroyed the heart of Chicago, approximately 3 1/3 square miles. Buildings during that time were rush productions and had little to no regard for fire-resistant materials or rigorous construction methods. The Board of Police and the fire commissioners had been lobbying unsuccessfully for additional fire hydrants. There was a limitation set for the use of wood for building materials and the elimination of the use of tar for roofing materials since 1865. A recommendation was made by Fire Marshal Robert A. Williams in 1869 for the city to obtain steam engines that would be used in the Chicago River. He also insisted that larger water mains be installed throughout the city. The city's common council failed to fund these mitigation measures and proposals, and the vast majority of blame comes from the lack of financial resources available at that time. Although the Chicago Fire Department was seen as efficient, its force was spread too thin. The department lacked resources to protect the city, predominantly made of 36 miles of wood. The summer of 1871 was devastatingly hot, and in the 22 days from September 17th to October 8th, less than 1 inch of rain fell. By the first week of October in the city of Chicago, it was dry and scorched. All residents were aware of the dangers that fire could potentially have for their city, yet the city was insufficiently prepared. Even when they experienced 28 significant fires in the city prior to the most devastating one of them all. Property value at almost $200 million was destroyed. About 300 people lost their lives, and over 1,000 people were left homeless by the destructive fire. After the fire's demise, an investigation began on November 23rd and ended on December 12th. Despite interviewing 50 people during the course of the investigation, the Board of Police and the fire commissioners failed to produce an exact cause of the fire. After careful research, Richard Bell argued that Miss O'Leary and her cow could not have been the culprits. He suggested it was her neighbor, Daniel Pegleg Sullivan, due to the several holes he found in his testimony. By Bell's accounts, Miss O'Leary and her cow have been exonerated. The importance of this event from an emergency management standpoint is how city officials chose to respond or not to respond to this disaster. This event is also important because it teaches emergency managers the importance of building codes and having a plan in place to combat disaster. Thank you.